I'm here with Jeremiah Newton, a friend of mine, a guy that's been part of the festival since its inception, and creator of the Student Film Award,
Right.
which is a favorite part of, in all the 17 years we've been doing it, that's the best part. That's like the filet mignon.
Well, it's recognizing young filmmakers is an integral part of the festival's directive.
And it's always fun when they come back after making a blockbuster movie and they
Definitely.
return. They always remember those tender years.
Yeah, no, they were always very grateful to the festival for giving them their first chance.
Being a parent of somebody that went to Tisch, it's amazing. It's good to see all the tuition paid off because it's a terrific school, and I recommend it to anybody. It's my favorite film school.
It's expensive, but good, very good.
Yeah, it's true, but I figure it's well worth it, and it was the case for my son, and I think that
You were a great father, and he's lucky to have had you, and you're lucky to have had him.
oh yeah, it's a great relationship. But we're here to talk about a film that ever since I met you, you were thinking of doing, and it was a real sensitive thing to do, and it's probably one of the best documentaries, the most sensitive documentaries that I've ever seen, and it's about your dear friend Candy Darling.
Right. Candy Darling, who died in 1974 of cancer, who was up to that point my closest friend. I met her when I was 15 years old, and we were friends for a number of years till she died.
Candy Darling, she had such impact as being part of the Warhol factory and being part of, I mean, if you look at its early interviews, you look at her fashion things, her beautiful voice, the poise that she had, it's amazing. And light actually came from inside of her. And you had the pleasure of having a friendship for those years, and,
Yeah.
I think that the impact of that you still carry with you.
Well, she was, Candy was born a man. As a little boy, he started watching Million Dollar Movie on television. Million Dollar Movie was a theme song from Gone with the Wind, and the red velvet curtains that opened up very dramatically, black and white, of course. And
So $1 Million now a student film, don't you think?
I have seen student films that have cost close to $1 million. Sure. It's very expensive.
Yeah, CG and fire gags are unbelievable.
Right. Well, we didn't have any of that back in the 1950s, as you know. And if you were a little kid growing up in Long Island, which was very boring back then for a little boy, no museums, nothing really, no malls, nothing. And he started living this dream world, watching television a lot, and actually corresponding with Kim Novak, because
She wrote back.
Kim Novak wrote back, then her sister wrote back, and they had quite a thing going on. All those letters are in the Andy Warhol Museum now in Pittsburgh. I was there 2 weeks ago, and they have a whole room devoted to it. It's really wonderful seeing it.
And it's amazing because when you see this and you see the just the historic placement of it in not only the world of film but also society, in those days it was very difficult to express yourself in that and have that identity, don't you think?
You can imagine how it was for this person, this little boy who actually wanted to be a woman, and how impossible it was and how painful and how society scorned this kid. And it was very, very, very difficult for her to transform into this person.
And see what's happening now with the taunting still goes on in 21st century where
Not only taunting, but murders. You could be murdered very easy. You go out your door and you're murdered. Just because of what you are, who you are.
Right.
It's insane. So society hasn't changed that much since the 1950s.
we might think it has, but it still is
It
cruel.
really hasn't, outside your door is another world all the time. If the wrong person sees you, your number could be up.
What can society do to make it a little bit more sensible?
Understand that people have a right to live and that people get hurt when they're called bad names. Even little children know that. And to be tolerant and understand who these people are. And movies like my film will help people who are transgendered help people understand how people live like that and who they are, and they're not monsters.
No, and right now there's a whole movement on. In fact, at the station, we actually this past couple of months did a benefit, and it was for instituting help for children that transgender children, that they can get assistance and help.
I had a woman stop me in Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago. She was in her 90s. She had been a nurse in the 1940s, and she said a little baby was brought to her who had just been born, who had 2 sex organs, and they had to decide what to do with this child, and she never knew what happened to the child. She said in all these 60 years or so, she always wondered every night what happened to this child. And I mean, this happens a lot, you know.
Sure, and you know, we're part of both genders, and basically
No one is 50-50.
no, and I think that the main thing is that whatever, we have to be loved and love one another.
Love is the most important thing, and it's a wonderful 4-letter word. You know, love is very important.
Well, on that note, you'll love to see this movie. It's called Candy Darling, but the full title is
Beautiful Darling, the life and times of Candy Darling, Andy Warhol Superstar. And it took me since 1974 to do, but we really started working on it 4 years ago, and it's got everybody in it: John Waters, Fran Lebowitz, just some great artists from New York and the world.
And just a hint that tune, Walk on the Wild Side,
Yeah, by Lou Reed, and also Candy Says was written
Candy
for Candy in the 1970s. And also there's a song by the Rolling Stones called The Citadel, which mentions Candy in it. So there were a lot of artists like Salvador Dali and Andy Warhol, of course, and Louise Nevelson. They all idolized Candy, and when she died, many hearts were broken.
absolutely. And if you Google this, there's a whole series of photographs of her on her deathbed that are exquisitely beautiful. I mean, she approached even that
Peter
chapter.
Hujar, yeah. She knew that was the day before she was operated on for cancer, and she would live 6 months to the day practically, and she knew she would look only good so long. And it was over a holiday weekend. She contacted Robert Mapplethorpe. He was out of town.
Wow.
Everyone. And then Peter Hujar, who was not famous then. Now his stuff is in the Whitney Museum,
Absolutely.
including that photograph.
Absolutely. But she's preserved forever in our hearts, and I think that is testimony to her beauty and to her life. You did a beautiful job.
Hi, I'm Candy Darling. I'm an actress here in New York.
Everything she did was a scene from a movie. She was always on stage.
She completely created this thing called Candy Darling.
She always had this glamorous aura, but she was always sleeping on somebody's couch.
Candy came from out on the island. In the back room she was everybody's darling. But she never lost her head. Even when she was giving head, she says, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side.
Someday, I'll be a movie star. That's it. And I'll be rich and famous and have all the friends I want. Andy came into a luncheonette where I was working as a waitress. And he came over to me and said, you should be in movies.
Hit them eyes.
Yeah.
I just kept sitting there thinking, Candy's ready for the world. But is the world ready for Candy?